Hello there, Atheist Junior here, your friend and humble narrator, and I'm doing a nice conversation with somebody who I think is going to be very interesting individual to watch out for as an up and coming sort of in the Kent Hovind debate and atheist YouTube sort of sphere, and as Austin Sims. So Austin, how are you doing? And tell us a little bit about yourself. And when are you debating Kent Hovind? I know that's coming up soon. So
I'm debating Kent on December 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. My name's Austin Sims. I'm just a regular guy from Michigan. I do computers for a living. I have been debating since I was in middle school, and that's how I learned that Kent Hovind was even a person. You know, one of my middle school science or debate teachers showed us one of his videos of him debating. And so I heard about him through that, didn't think about him for years. Then I enrolled in college, was studying biophysics to begin with, and I had a lot of time in between classes. So I started going to the computer lab a lot and going on the Twitters and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and stuff. And there were a lot of creationists that I would run into because I was like always interested in talking about biology and taxonomy and paleontology and all that stuff. And if you just talk about that stuff online, they just kind of come out of the woodwork and will like start attacking you and going crazy. So I was in college and debating a lot of creationists, and then my wife got pregnant, so I dropped out of college, got a job in computers. I was like 3 credits short of my degree when I dropped out, but I got a really good job, so I didn't worry much about going back and finishing. Focused on work and rearing my kids for a good like 6 or 7 years, and then recently I ended up having a lot of free time and I started getting back into science again, like especially biology. Like I've got all my biology books right here. I've got this immunobiology book. This thing chocked full of evidence of evolution. You have so much inherited immunity from your ancestors, from diseases that your ancestors survived. So it's important to understand evolution because evolution allows us to understand these other things: microbiology, immunobiology, all these big stacks of textbooks I have sitting next to me. And I think it's important because there's these big problems facing the planet, and understanding science and philosophy is going to help us solve those problems. And I think creationism, it's worth it to debate and argue and fight them because they are on the opposite side of a lot of these problems. Like, I put the 5 biggest problems as war, hatred, violence, inequality, ecological self-destruction, overabundance of pointless competition and not enough cooperation, undervaluing intellect, education, critical thinking, skepticism, logic, science, philosophy, and politics.
like anti-intellectualism.
Yeah. And then the 5th one is a little bit of a back burner problem. It's the planetary mortality problem. It's the fact that at some point, Earth is going to become unlivable. The sun's going to expand, or something's going to hit our galaxy, or, there's going to be a huge shift in climate. Ice caps start melting, or there'll be an ice age, or some huge catastrophe that will make Earth drastically unlivable. And if we don't have some place to go to by then and some way to get there, that's basically it for us. Those are the 5 big problems. And I think creationists are solidly on the other side of a lot of those problems. They're on the other side of the anti-intellectual problem. They're on the other side of the ecological self-destruction problem. They're on the other side of the planetary mortality problem for sure, because they don't think anything's going to happen to the planet. Or at least anything that's not God ordained and that we're not completely powerless to stop anyways, So because of that, it started off just wanting to actually like get my hands dirty and see if I could like actually debate some creationists. Like, oh, I'm going to fight creationism. Oh, holy shit. People are super indoctrinated by this shit, like, and then part of it after that became like through all these conversations I was having, realizing that, fighting the creationists is great, but really the reason we're fighting them is because of these big problems that they're not helping us solve, and that creationism is creating kind of a brain drain effect. They're taking intellectual resources that need to be used to solve these problems away from us by mind fucking children and gaslighting them
Yeah.
and scooping their brains out and putting them in a blender and putting it on the highest setting, and then pouring the mixture back in. And so I kind of want to resist them a little bit, and I started doing it. It's been going pretty well. Sorry, I got the sniffles a little bit. I think my kids might have given me something. If you'll excuse me,
for me, it's just as soon as this weather got cold, I immediately, like, I started having a runny nose. It's like, I don't know if it's allergies or just because, like, I live in Texas, like we've talked about, and it's
my home state,
basically like warm outside for the past 3 or 4 months, and then the other day it's just like I went outside in the morning, it's 43 degrees outside, and that's not that cold compared to a lot of places, but I was like, whoa. And then I just immediately get a runny nose. So you're a normal guy, a computer nerd. I think you didn't mention what we were talking about earlier, that you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm a black belt in judo, taekwondo, and then I have varying levels of belts in 12 other martial arts, from aikido to savate to silat. I've eskrima. I've trained all kinds of martial arts and self-defense strategies and techniques and ideas. Probably the one I studied the most was the Army H2H Combat Manual.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a black belt in judo, not
in judo, taekwondo. Okay. Yeah.
It's not that impressive then. Yeah, well, and I wanted to point that out, because if you guys haven't noticed, you're pretty large dude. You're
I do a little bit of training still. I think
you look good. You look good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was joking about this in the offline. I was just I think if you have our atheist sort of YouTuber community and Ken Hovind debate community, why would you not take the opportunity to add someone who's a black belt in mixed martial arts? Because it's I've done these debates against some of these young earth creationists, like Proverbs guys and Lupin, and it's very frustrating. And I was just joking of hey, Lupin, I'm gonna have my friend Austin go and to pay you a visit.
It helps in debates to have a more commanding presence without having to really do anything. One time, one of the debates I was having with a creationist, at one point he was just going off, just screaming, and I couldn't even talk. And literally all I had to do was hold up one finger and and that shut him up long enough to get things back on the track. So it has its advantages for sure.
Yeah. Because something I struggle with is, you said, when you debate some of these people who really, they seem like they're trying to deliberately frustrate you. And I have struggled with this on YouTube, if it's towards the end of the debate, and I it's hard for me sometimes to resist the urge to just say F you,
Yeah.
That's something I've always been working through, because
so with debates, it's really, really important to work the crowd. The crowd is the thing you should be most concerned about when you're doing debates. And my familiarity with debates, doing academic debates, high school debates and college debates, a lot of times there is no crowd. The crowd is just the moderators, and so you play to them. And Ken's audience is a very, very hostile audience to anybody who isn't preaching Ken's exact script, basically. So he has the ultimate home field advantage. They assume that he is defending the word of God and therefore automatically has the moral high ground. So I was really psyched to get the specific subject we did, because that is going to allow me to attack that presupposition a little bit. And because the subject is it reasonable to say there's evidence for evolution? I'm going to be able to, offer theological, philosophical evidence, mathematical evidence, and say, yes, this is rational to say this is evidence for evolution. And Kent's usual, get to the evidence of evolution line should be dead in the water, because the subject is it rational to say there's evidence, which I think I've got some great sources that say that it is. And they're especially powerful sources because most of them themselves were theists, even extreme Christians, the Christian theologists who Christians should respect and should definitely not say a lot of the crazy things that they like to say about evolutionists, like, they're just trying to fight God or undermine God or love sin. Like, do you think Saint Augustine wanted to undermine God? You think he wanted to glorify sin? Did Saint Augustine get into heaven? Did Saint Augustine, was he judged by God? Like, if he didn't, what hope do we have?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I want to give you a little piece of advice for the debate
direction. And I don't want to reveal too much about my strategy and what specifically I'm going to argue, because I want to get Kent's unvarnished reaction. I don't know if Donnie ever watches your channel. Right. But sorry, what were you saying?
Right. Well, I wanted to give you a little piece of advice, because in the offline you had mentioned that, talking about, oh, well, there's evidence from these fields, and you listed the fields, and as Grayson said on the stream we did last time, he said that it seems like I know what Ken is going to say almost before he says it. And when you were saying that, I was thinking, well, I know that Kent his response is going to be, oh, well, just listing all those fields, that's not evidence. When so it listening to us, it is impressive, but to them it's not necessarily impressive, because so you don't want to simply list the different fields. One thing I like to point out is that yes, there's this many different fields that confirm evolution, but that's not why that it's a good piece of evidence. What's a good piece of evidence is the fact that these fields cross-confirm each other, even though they are radically different fields of science, and that's why it's good evidence for evolution. So that's just
that is one of the points. That is one of the points I want to make.
Yeah.
And I also am going to go a step farther and say that, Kent, you're right. Just listing them doesn't, but I'm willing to go a step further and say I can make a case for why each one of these does support evolution. I can do it fairly easily. Like, for example, how does comparative genetic analysis support evolution? Well, comparative genetic analysis supports evolution by allowing scientists to compare DNA sequences of different species, revealing shared genetic similarities that indicate common ancestry, providing strong evidence for evolutionary relationships between organisms and how they diverged over time through natural selection. Essentially, the most similar the DNA, the closer the evolutionary relationship. Like, this is really, really easy and simple. This one especially, it's really easy to make the case for how it supports evolution. By comparing genes, scientists can identify the genes that are highly similar across disparate species and make deliberations about how related they are, how recently they would have diverged from common ancestry. And I can easily find a dozen or more links to back me up. I have them pretty much ready and compiled as a part of my preparation for the debate.
Well, I just my advice is that while I do think it's definitely great that while I agree there's many fields, and I'm sure you have lots of sources, you likely want to just remember that it's good to try and stay focused and not present too many things, because it doesn't matter if Kent accuses you of bringing up too many topics. It's just simply that in these debates you simply won't get to talk about as many of the points as you want to, so you really have to pick your battles.
Yeah, so I was going to just drop the block of topics and then say for this debate, I wanted to focus on theology and philosophy.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. So you got to be with Kent. Really, it's not the debate if you're going to win against Kent. The thing is with debating Kent Hovind, it's kind of like aliens versus predator. Whoever wins, we all lose, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not really that you need to have the best, most convincing evidence of evolution, because Kent's going to disagree and hand wave anything you present as evidence, period. He just will. He won't accept it as evidence. So a great question to ask Kent that he's gotten very annoyed when I've asked him is, well, what would you accept as evidence of evolution? What would count? What would you have to see if you don't think that what we're showing here is right because it has like a double standard or whatever? Yeah. So I'm gonna let you finish, but in a second, I would like to show a video from my channel that's a debate between Eugenie Scott and Kent Hovind, and I want to show you a little bit of this, and I want you to pay attention to how she handles Kent. But we'll do that in a little bit, so you can go ahead and just.
Eugenie Scott's awesome. She's
absolutely
brilliant.
Incredible.
No, I was gonna say I know that Kent is probably not going to let me get into the evidence too much, and that he's going to hand wave. And I do have some arguments that I think will help with that. And one of those is that science doesn't really do proof. Science does collect as much data as you can and then use it to understand the universe better if you're able to, and resolve to collect more data if you're not. And evolution has done that. It has collected an ungodly amount of data, that it's so immense that it's unwieldy to try and use such an amount of data in just a regular debate. That's why a debate on Facebook isn't really how you settle a matter like this. It's been settled with, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of hours of lab work and, studying and field work and actually doing things in a laboratory. So to think that a Facebook or YouTube debate at all matters to it is a little silly.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. That's why ultimately I consider these debates to be entertainment.
Yeah.
And, they're not proper scientific, rigorous debates, but they're entertainment. They're a good way to grow and become better at debating, or better at doing YouTube, presenting to camera and presenting information. We should strive to be good, effective communicators when it comes to evolution, because I think the majority of the United States, or even Western population, but specifically the United States I'm talking about, because that's where I live, and so that's my perspective, is that there's just a general very poor understanding of evolution and what it is. And so we need to, because I've always been not a big fan of the definition of evolution as the change in allele frequencies, because if you tell that to the average person, they're gonna be like, well, what's an allele? So that's why I prefer, like, what Darwin said, descent with modification. Just the offspring of animals are different than their parents, and then that when that offspring has children, they're also going to be different, and those little differences are going to continue to add up generation after generation until either there's an animal that's different, maybe it still looks the same-ish, but it can't interbreed with this other population anymore, and now we have speciation, which that's considered evolution. But yeah, so one thing is
inheritable characteristics.
Yeah, it's good. Your choice of words, I feel, is very important in talking about evolution, and especially in a debate with Kent, because Kent loves to use very vague words, and I've always tried to call him out on
definitions a lot.
Yeah, he uses vague words like, oh, there's this many types of roses. They probably had a common ancestor, which was a rose. Like, well, probably. Okay. And I asked him, like, why do you say probably? Like, why don't you know? And he's like, oh, I wasn't there. We weren't there. It's a Ken Ham argument,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what gets me about that is My immediate response is, okay, bam, that's evolution. Bro, one population becoming many, that's all that's necessary for evolution, period. And you admit to it pretty much with your biblical kinds argument. I don't think change within kinds is not exactly evolution. It is even if I admit that, changing kinds is what is happening, that's still evolution. But,
Yeah,
I don't think they have a good answer for how it's not
exactly.
evolution.
I love this argument from Snake was right, and what he says is that, and I think Dr. Dan may have also made this argument. Maybe I'm getting it mixed up, but it doesn't matter. But what he'll say is that, oh well, if creationists don't accept macroevolution, we can still get pretty far with just microevolution, and seeing
Right, that's an
changes like
ironic statement.
like we see fish that can sort of almost walk underwater, like and then there are fish that can, mud skippers that can sort of come out of the water and they have lungs, and you have flying squirrels that have uh, skin that allows them to glide. Like that seems like
It
is
doesn't
it
matter.
evolving into a bird? No, but it's
It doesn't matter what you call it. If the biodiversity on the planet is capable of developing sexually selective or reproductive genetic barriers of any kind, where currently they didn't exist between populations that share common ancestors, period. That's it. That's evolution. And he admits to that. They just call it change within kinds, which is really weird and ironic. But yeah, I want to watch this. You want to
Yeah,
share?
this is one of, in my opinion, the greatest takedowns of Kent ever. So this is from 1993, and I want you to pay attention to how she handles Kent, how she sort of manhandles him, how she controls him and reins him in, because this is something that I really you're gonna have to remember, is that Kent is going to be like going all over the place, like like a loose fire hose. You know what I mean? Of BS.
The
And
Gestalt.
yeah, you got to be able to rein him in,
full
and
blast.
Eugenie does a great job in this video. So I just want to play some of this, and this is a video on my channel where I took this debate and I just sort of added a couple of memes to it and just made a few edits, and people really seem to enjoy it because Jesus, this is 18K views and over 1,000 comments on this video. So thank you to the people who watched this video. All right, let's get this started.
And she's joining us today from California. Dr. Eugenie Scott has been since 1987 the executive director of the National Center for Science Education Incorporated. It's a pro-evolution, nonprofit science education organization with members in every state. Dr. Eugenie Scott holds a PhD in physical anthropology from the University of Missouri. She is taught at the University of Kentucky, the University of Colorado, and in the California State University system. She's a human biologist. Her research has been in medical anthropology and skeletal biology, and she has
your mic, AJ. Sorry, it's being weird. But yeah, while you get that, there you go. You sounding good again? Oh no, you're muted again. There you go. I think I can hear you now again. Oh no, false alarm. Dang. Keeps going in and out, bud.
Why to communicate the scientific method to the general public and to improve how science as a way of knowing is taught in school. She has appeared on Our Magazine, Geraldo, Crossfire, Issues on Trial, the Morning Edition on NPR, the Pat Buchanan Show, and All Things Considered, etc., etc. And she joins us this afternoon. I thank you. I'm not exactly sure how we'll.
I was just gonna say, if you want me to pause the video, let me know.
No, yeah, I'll shout out.
Okay, that's all I was trying to say. So yeah, just let me know.
Yeah,
pause it.
I'll say something real quick. I doubt you could ever friend Kent Hovind on Facebook without going through all of his minions. But I went on Facebook and I searched up Eugenie Scott, and she's right there on Facebook, and her friend request channel is right open. I sent her a friend request. So yeah, absolutely. I feel like even the experts on the different sides are completely different. The experts on the science side, they're totally open. They're super friendly. They're super nice. They'll spend their time educating you for free just because you showed interest in their field. you know. But
Yeah,
anyways, yeah, let's continue.
Jeannie is great.
I guess we'll begin with the basic argument. The basic argument is that scientists, or some scientists, believe that the world was not created precisely the way it's spelled out in the book of Genesis, but creationists believe literally in the book of Genesis. Is that pretty much the argument we have here?
Well, there are probably quite a few creationists who would still not believe the literal Genesis account. They would maybe say God did it, but not according to the book of Genesis. So there's a variety of creationists. I am a Bible-believing young earth creationist. I believe the Bible is literally true, scientifically accurate, and that the world is less than 10,000 years old. What I object to, I guess, is the general theory of evolution, that the entire universe made itself out of nothing for no apparent reason, and that no creator is necessary. I would say that a real strict definition would make evolution atheistic.
Well,
You don't need that.
I don't see how you can say that, because evolution is a science, and a science cannot be atheistic or pro-religious. A science has to be neutral toward religion.
And what I hear you, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Dr. Scott, what I heard you saying in your opening comments was the fact that, at least what I gathered, was the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. That
But the thing about science is a particular way of knowing. Revelation is another way of knowing. There's a variety of ways of knowing. Science is a particular way of knowing that is restricted. In science, we're trying to understand a restricted phenomenon, which is the natural world, and we have restrictions on how we go about understanding that phenomenon.
So therefore, if 10 years from now you discovered something in your scientific research, either of you, that would dispute the theory of revolution, or evolution rather, or would dispute your theory of creationism, would either of you be open to change?
Absolutely.
Yes, I would.
That's an excellent question, and I would actually like to ask Kent, what kind of data would refute young Earth special creation? I've never been able, when I've asked this of other young Earth special creationists, I've never been able to get an answer that is actually testable. Can you give me an example of what kind of data would cause you to rethink whether the world was created all at one time and all of the plants and animals in their present form?
Yes, you mentioned a key word there, testable. I think you made a statement a few minutes ago that evolution is a science. I would object to that vehemently. Evolution is a philosophy. It's actually a religion.
He's not going to answer the question of what would convince him. He's going to just completely dodge and dip around it to talk about how evolution can't be tested, is what I'm guessing.
But watch how she handles this situation, because this is what I love. So just
About the science first.
Okay, well, yeah, that's what I want to distinguish between. See, evolution is not science. It's a religion that people choose to believe in.
But Kent, what kind of data would cause you to give up your conclusion that the literal view of the Bible, that all the plants and animals were created in their present form a short period of time ago, within thousands of years?
Right.
What kind of data would cause you to give that idea up?
Yeah, I will get to that in a second, but we got a couple things hanging that I think are very preliminary to this. The definition of science is not a way of knowing. You'll notice in the last 20 years, there's been a real tendency in the textbooks to change the definition of science to what she said earlier. Science is a way of knowing. If you look it up in a dictionary, science is the accumulated body of knowledge that we have.
Oh, that's so different than what she said.
Right, yeah. I think I see what she's doing. She's just going to keep asking him the question until he actually answers it.
Yeah, and that's really just a great piece of advice that I tell everyone who debates Kent. If and when he dodges one of your questions, just ask it again. Just keep asking it, because that, to me, you're holding his feet to the fire. You're trying to make him accountable, and I think that it looks bad to his audience when he is getting asked again and again. At some point, people are going to say that, I support Kent, but it seemed like he was kind of not answering that question, right? So just if he doesn't answer your question, just keep asking him. That's why I love how she does this.
I've gotten that advice from like 5 different people about this Kent debate, and I really appreciate
probably one of the best things you can really do, honestly. So yeah.
It's things that we know. The scientific method involves things that are observable, testable, and demonstratable. Evolution is none of those. Nobody observes it happening. We don't observe any major changes. We don't see a horse, coming from a butterfly. We don't see a horse, coming from a butterfly. We don't see a horse, coming from a butterfly. We don't see. We don't see.
Certainly, evolutionists would never predict that.
Sure. Well, they predict it did happen over a long period of time.
Hardly. I don't think anybody's predicted that horses came from butterflies. I think somebody's misled you about what evolution is, if that's the case.
Wow. So blunt, so flat.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
Eugenie's 100,000% right there.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, this is one of my favorite Ken Hovind debates for sure. Like, yeah, and just the fact that she's a Ken Hovind is such a misogynist, and the fact that she's a great female scientist just makes it even better.
Yes.
Do you believe? Wait a minute. Wait. Do you believe?
Wait, whoa, what?
Collins introduced us to.
Okay. Do you believe fish gradually changed to amphibians? Amphibians changed to reptiles. Reptiles changed to mammals.
Actually, that's not the way it happened. But we keep getting distracted here, Mr. Collins. The question I asked, which we sort of haven't been able to get to, is what kind of data would Kent accept that would demonstrate to him that all plants and animals did not occur suddenly all at one time within the last couple thousand years?
All right, let me jump in here. I'd like Dr. Hovind, if you would answer that question.
Hey, good job from the moderator right there. That's what I like to see. So, good job to the mod.
Answer her
Okay.
question.
In order for something to be scientific, it has to be observable, testable, demonstratable. There is no way this argument's going to be resolved scientifically. You can't offer data that proves the Earth is billions of years old because you were not there, I was not there, nobody you know was there. It is outside the realm of science. This idea of proving the Earth is young or old is simply impossible scientifically. It's not testable, it's not demonstratable. The problem is there are two different ways to look at things, and some people, they interpret the facts in light of their philosophy. The evolutionists have already decided the Earth is billions of years old, and so when they look at the fossil record, they see those different layers of rocks as being different ages. The creationist looks at the different layers of rocks, the same data, we're both staring at the same geologic formations, and the creationist comes to the conclusion that all of these rock layers were deposited very rapidly in a catastrophe, the worldwide flood. So we both have the same data, but we're coming to opposite conclusions based on our prejudices, our preconceived ideas.
Boy, talk about projection.
Wow. And still not answering the question, too. Still no idea what data Kent is actually looking for that would force him to change his views. Still just completely ignoring the question and going on an unrelated rant. Kent is using what's called the ad nauseum fallacy here, basically. He's going to use the same argument over and over again, basically like browbeating his opponent with a broomstick until they're just tired of it and they agree with him just to shut him up. And then Kent takes their silence as actually winning, when really, it's more like a parent conceding to a child in a toy store. Fine, get the toy, just stop annoying me about it, which, there's a lot of problems with using ad nauseum fallacies in your argument. You'll get agreement, but the agreement is superficial. So you might end up with like a large number of followers, for instance, but not a lot of people that are actually willing to do something to support your cause. Like, I think that is definitely majorly true about Kent Hovind. He has probably millions of followers at this point, but only like 3,000 or 4,000 like really devoted people who haven't gotten tired of his shtick and still think he's relevant. Yeah, it's the ad nauseum argument, the ad nauseum and the reductio ad absurdum. Those are the ad absurdum and ad infinitum are Kent's bread and butter. He uses them constantly, and I think using a kind of silly way to respond to it can take a lot of wind out of the sails. Eugenie Scott should have brought a clicker to this debate so she could click how many times she could ask this question. Okay, that's 4, Kent. That's 5, Kent. 6, Kent, because it doesn't, like actually attack the opponent and say, look at this piece of shit. He won't answer the actual fucking question. It just kind of points out how childish they're being.
Yeah. And what I was saying is that Kent is almost got a good point here, but he's saying that they're both guilty of. We're looking at the evidence, and then we're coming to a conclusion based on our preconceived biases, and like that. No, that's what you're doing, Kent. With Eugenie,
You're half
it's like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, you know, she's looking at the scientific consensus on issues, and I'm sure like with NCSE, they've done plenty of their own research, and specifically they've done a ton of activism for like the Dover trial, Kitzmiller versus Dover, like keeping evolution out of public schools is like their mission statement. So the members don't do a lot of debates that I know of, except for this one with Eugenie. But I just love, the way that she just keeps the pressure on Kent. And I just think that this is a good debate to watch for anybody who's preparing to debate Kent. Just really, look at how she just keeps him on a short leash, and she really controls the conversation, which is harder than it looks. Ken Hovind is going to do his best to control the conversation, control the amount of talk time, so he gets more, even though he's always saying, "I want equal time." No, he wants more time. He wants all the time, and so.
What I'm really appreciating about this is that she definitely seems to understand the ad infinitum tactic, and she understands its drawbacks, which is that another thing about it. Yeah, it makes you sound like, you're winning or whatever. But like, you're not going to convince the actual intellectual people. This kind of tactic is only going to convince people as pig-headed and bullish as you yourself are. It's not going to convince people who are actually listening to the question and noticing that you didn't answer it. That's my part of what I'm getting from this is of Eugenie's tactic, and I really like it.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going.
So what you're saying then is there are no data that would cause you to reject your point of view, because your scientific creationism really isn't scientific.
Well, neither is evolution. You mentioned in the letter that you faxed in.
We're talking about evolution yet. We're talking about you. We'll get back to evolution in a second.
No, I agree.
What you're saying is that scientific creationism is not scientific.
I agree. There's no possible way to prove it scientifically.
Why do you guys keep trying to get it taught in the public school science classes? If it's not science, it shouldn't be taught.
Well, see, that's to prove the point. Evolution isn't science either, and it shouldn't be taught.
Let's talk about whether evolution is scientific. First of all, you have an exceedingly narrow definition of what science is. If we had to refer to things scientific as only those which were directly testable, directly observable, we'd have a pretty short list of sciences that we could talk about. For example, particle physics. Nobody has seen an atom. Nobody can observe the particles that are smashing into each other in an atom smasher.
Oh, I agree. Sure.
So therefore, particle physics is not science.
No, there is a lot of theory in particle physics. An awful lot of theory.
But hey, but it's not science because you can't directly observe it.
Well, my point in this is that, and it's very difficult to get an evolutionist to admit this, what they have is exactly the same as what a creationist has. They have a strong belief in something that is not observable, testable, or demonstratable. Both are fundamentally religions. And
now you're saying that unless it's directly observable, it's not scientific. So, but I think that you'll probably agree that particle physics is a science. So there must be some kinds of sciences in which direct observation is not completely relevant.
Yes, and I would say creation would fall into that category. Creation is.
I'm glad you're enjoying my meme edits.
Oh, I love them. You know what? She's already grilling him, and you are just turning the heat up extra high. I love it.
Yeah, and it's just crazy because this is literally from, I think, 1993, and Ken Hovind made these same arguments yesterday. It's just 30 years. Jeez.
Yep, he's got a lot of practice with his script. He's got it very well memorized for sure.
and something that is not observable, testable, or demonstratable, both are fundamentally religions. And yet,
no, you're saying that unless it's directly observable, it's not scientific. So, but I think that you'll probably agree that particle physics is a science. So there must be some kinds of sciences in which direct observation is not completely relevant.
Yes, and I would say creation would fall into that category. Creation is a scientific theory that is not directly testable. I mean, we weren't here when God created the world.
Well,
But
I don't know. I can think of some ways to test young Earth creationism.
Okay, let's hear one.
Well, you should be doing this job because one of the things that a real scientist does is come up with ways that his theory or explanation could possibly be refuted.
Okay, I've got a good one for you if you can't think of one.
You know, if you have if the entire geological column was laid down by the flood, which is your position, how do you explain 80 different layers of coal in the Midwest? Were there 80 different floods?
Oh, no, that could all be done in one flood. Mount St. Helens is doing a good job of proving that for us right now as we speak.
No, Mount St. Helens shows that catastrophes of various sorts and large quantities of water can produce very impressive geological features. It
Exactly
does not,
right.
by any stretch of the imagination, demonstrate that the whole Grand Canyon could be laid down by water.
Well, no, wait. Now, you would have to agree, I'm sure, if you studied your geology, that all of the layers of strata in the geologic column in the Grand Canyon are sedimentary rock, which means they were indeed laid down by water.
Nope, some of them were laid down by air.
Volcanic,
Some
yeah.
Windblown. Are aeolian deposits, which is pretty tough for you guys to handle when it's...
No. You mean talk about windblown ash and stuff? Sure, that happens. I think in the flood, there was a catastrophe, disaster, volcanoes going off, there was ash layers. The trees.
It's pretty crazy because you got the flood going over, depositing a water layer, and then you have the flood waters going someplace, an ash layer being deposited, then the flood water coming back and depositing water layer. You know, this whole thing is just really silly.
She says the fossil record is not good. That's always a good one, shield to hide behind. You know, we don't have these missing links. Actually, the whole chain is missing.
Well, we got plenty of fossils. We've got lots of intermediate forms.
Okay. I disagree 100%. I think I could discredit each and every one, or it could be interpreted from a creationist viewpoint. There are probably many species that have gone extinct. If the creator designed the creation with a variety of different kinds, basic kinds of animals, and they produced varieties of offspring, for instance, dogs, you know, there's 250 kinds of dogs, and they all came from a common ancestor. It was the dogs that got off Noah's Ark.
How about beetles?
There's hundreds of kinds of beetles. I don't know how many different various kinds there are. There's lots of species and subspecies, and, you know, you break it down. See, our modern classification system done by Carolus Linnaeus here in the last few hundred years is not necessarily, you know, species is not necessarily the biblical kind.
That's a very difficult issue for you folks because
it's difficult for you folks.
Creationists defines kind as species, as family, even as order, and one even defined it as a phylum. So if you've got a concept that is that wishy-washy, it's pretty difficult to say that it's a very good scientific way of classifying nature.
But do we have anything that's currently living that we can point to and say, yes, that used to be so-and-so, but it has evolved into something else? We do have things that we can point to and say, yes, they have adapted to their environment, but can we say that one kind of marsupial became another kind of marsupial?
Well, how about lions and tigers? How about if we look at speciation in action, so to speak?
Okay.
If you take lions and tigers, basically they occupy the same kind of ecological niche, one in Africa, one in Asia. It's a large felid. It's hunting large ungulate animals, generally by stalking rather than by running them down. And it basically kills animals because of its very, very great strength. Tigers and lions can interbreed in a zoo. There have been a few cases where accidentally tigers and lions have gotten together in the biblical sense and have produced ligers or tigons, whatever you want to call them, but it's a hybrid between a tiger and a lion. It doesn't normally occur in nature, of course. But what that shows is that these two species, which are really quite different morphologically, actually are genetically similar enough to exchange genes and still be considered close to being the same species. Now, I suppose the creationist would explain that, well, God actually created the lion kind or maybe the tiger kind, and they've diverged since the flood. I think the evolutionist argument is much more satisfactory. The evolutionist would say that you've got, back in the Miocene period, you've got large cats that expanded over the Africa and Asia and even Eurasian continent. They were separated off during the Pliocene when the climate got considerably drier and the Arabian desert area sort of cut off this faunal transfer from one continent to another. And you end up with lions in Africa and tigers in Asia, which are in the process of diversifying into two separate species.
Let me ask you a question, Doctor.
Oh, but they're still the same kind of animal. They're still a cat. I mean, change the butterfly to a lion. Now that would be evolution. Change the butterfly to a lion. Now that would be evolution. Change the butterfly to a lion. Now that would be evolution.
No, Ken.
And see,
it wouldn't be. It'd be nonsense. No
That's
evolution.
a magical transformation. That's some bippity boppity boop shit. You know, population changing into multiple different populations. That is exactly evolution. You know, it does bring up a couple of points that I think are really kind of, like, one, we've only seen, about 10 minutes of this debate so far, but this is like every single Kent Hovind debate. You could just watch this debate and you've basically seen them all. I feel like he's using the exact arguments. Eugenie knows exactly the nonsense that shuts him down, speciation. And he's just kind of dancing around and using the same, Hovindisms that he uses in every single debate. And the reason creationists do this, and especially Kent does it in the way that he does it, is partly because, yes, we do have this speciation evidence. He can't deny that. So what he's trying to do, he's trying to use speciation to support the flood story and say that the flood story is more plausible because then you don't have to fit all of these different species on the boat. You can just fit a couple and they'll diversify. But then at the same time, so they partly need part of evolution to be true in order for the flood story to be more possible. But at the same time, they need evolution to be wrong so there can be a literal Adam and Eve. They're caught between like a rock and a hard place on that.
What? Adam's thick bunch of shit. We were teal skin it in a bland plant. We could take a 10. 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 We could take a 10.
But yeah, that was just something I was thinking about as I'm watching here. I'm interested to see how Eugenie approaches that. AJ, you there? Uh-oh. I think we might have lost AJ, guys. AJ?
On this planet ever said that lions are descended from butterflies.
okay, they
If
believe.
you go back far enough, you can probably find a common answer to butterflies and lions.
See,
There's
that's a
common answers
religion.
to Butterflies and lions, but it's absurd to say that lions and butterflies are directly, one evolved into the other.
How do we explain that all the kangaroos in the world are in Australia? That all the tigers and lions, except those who've been moved artificially here, and elephants are in Africa, that horses were not native to America, that they were brought here from Europe.
The question you're asking, Mike, is how do you explain biogeography? How do you explain distribution of plants and animals?
Well, I would have no problem. I would say there was a worldwide flood 4,400 years ago. There were 2 of each or 7 of some basic kinds of animals on board Noah's Ark. And in the last 4,400 years, there's been an enormous variation within the created kind. I don't know if lions and tigers have a common ancestor.
But wait a minute. If the flood took place and the Ark came down on Mount Ararat.
In that region, right?
In that region, how do you explain kangaroos exclusively migrating to Australia across a large landmass and across a large body of water after that, and having oak trees in England and America, but not in the Middle East?
Well, the different climates are, there's biological warfare going on. That's not a good term to use, but the species do compete for land space, and some maybe would not be competent to survive.
But how do they get there?
How did they get there?
Well, if the oceans were not as deep as they are today.
How did they get there?
If you lowered the oceans just 1,000 feet, and
how did they get there?
they average 15,000 feet in depth. If you took that much water out of the oceans, all the continents become connected. The continental land bridge would be enormous between all these continents. The Bible says in the book
How did they get there?
of Genesis chapter 10, in the days of Peleg, about 100 years after the flood, the earth was divided. There are several different creationist viewpoints on that, and it's not provable. Nobody was there.
How did they get there?
But the interpretation that I give to that is that the ice caps that had come all the way down to Kansas City, Missouri during the time of the flood were melting back. And that's why we have a continental shelf. And that's why within the first 100 years, the animals were able to get to different continents and then became isolated there and trapped where they are. There are marsupials over here, and kangaroo fossils have been found in other places. They've been found in Africa. But
they haven't.
Yes, they have.
Kangaroo fossils in Africa? That's nonsense. Your question is an excellent one, Mike. You've got the two little kangaroos hopping from the Middle East over across South Asia, and actually some creationists bring in continental drift here. They have the marsupials of Australia, this very unique fauna, hopping over into the continent of Australia, which then amazingly breaks apart from Asia at that point and sails down about 45 miles per hour to its present location in the South Pacific. But isn't it funny that the only place where you find fossil kangaroos and fossil Australian marsupials is in Australia? How come if those little varmints had to go all the way from the Middle East to South Asia and across into Australia, that they didn't leave any fossils behind them? They must not have reproduced. And
well, no, just a minute.
Two little kangaroo kind managed to stay close to each other. Did they hold hands all the way across the ocean? I mean, the biogeography is a real problem for flood geology.
How do we know, Dr. Scott, that the Earth is older than Dr. Hovind says it is, 6,000 years old?
Well, we know immediately from looking at tree ring dates. You understand about how every year a tree puts on an annular ring.
Right.
And you can match up trees from an area and literally count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from when that tree was cut down to when it was started and so forth and so on. And tree ring dates already go back to in excess of 12,000 years. So right there in a very, very simple, non-chemical, not difficult at all procedure, the world is obviously more than 6,000 years old. You can do the same thing with cores from the ocean.
Dr. Hovind was over here shaking his head during the tree ring explanations.
Sure, yes. Overlapping.
Still there, Doctor?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, the overlapping tree rings is an interesting one. There's been a lot of different studies on that. Dendrochronology is interesting. The idea is that you can match up the burn marks if a tree had a fire for forest.
No. You don't match up the burn marks. You match up the actual width of the rings.
Okay.
And you have to use the same species.
Sure, and I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that some trees produce more than one ring a year and some produce no rings a year. It's not an exact science like you try to make it out to be.
Well, it is, because if you use bristlecone pine, they only put 1 ring per year, and bristlecone pine are like redwoods. They live for very, very long periods of time.
Oh, I agree. And the oldest living bristlecone pine is 4,300 years old, which would put it after the flood. The Bible teaches the flood was 4,400 years ago. Well, hold it. Now, why is the oldest living tree 4,300 years old? Oldest living bristlecone pine.
I think that's pretty impressive that there's anything that old. I mean, you're expecting to have one that's 6,000 years old? Come on.
Why not?
So that when it comes to tree rings, you don't have to have one tree that's 14,000 years old in order to trace back the annular rings. You compare different trees.
The rings do not always match up exactly, and it is not an exact science like they try to make it out to believe.
Yeah, that's blatantly wrong, Not only is dendrochronology a fantastic dating method, it's cross-confirmed by 2 other methods by creationist sources themselves, which is why most creationists accept it. Hovind is just kind of weird about that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on my phone. So you can hear me now. All right.
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
This is why I wanted to show you this, because she just does such a great job of just not letting him dodge questions. She's on him. She's got great point after great point, and really I really like the moderator too, who I believe is a Christian, but like she says, he has a great question about biogeography, and I liked how he stopped the debate and said, no, I want you to answer her question. I mean, I wish we would see more of that from people like Donnie, who I think he has been fair in moderating my debates with Kent, but what he does is really, he just kind of goes hands off and just lets us sort of moderate the debate ourselves, which I appreciate, but at the same time, like, it's just nice to see like somebody come in like, no, Ken, you need to answer his question, which,
Donnie
is,
could
it's
definitely
different
learn a lot from this guy.
strategies, but yeah, Donnie has been fair to me as a mod. I know some people are critical of him in his moderation, but I think he's been pretty fair to me.
Yeah.
I like
Not
Donnie.
bad. Yeah, he's a pretty nice guy. I like him. Okay.
Yeah. So, I thank you for coming on. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I definitely feel I hope like just seeing this debate. What are your thoughts on this video? Maybe I'll let you give some final thoughts, and then we'll sort of wrap the stream up. Does that sound okay?
Sure. That sounds
All
great.
right.
My thoughts are that you should listen to the scientist lady in this debate.
Yeah, I agree.
She really sounds like she knows what she's talking about, even if I knew absolutely nothing about science.
And didn't know these
in the
people, didn't
moments
know who these
when-
people were,
Yeah. In
Right.
the moments when she's talking, I'm like, this sounds like a person who actually has some kind of clue whatsoever what science is, what the relevant facts are, and has a pretty good interpretation of them. That would be my immediate thought, is that and this debate happened 2 years after I was born, and Ken Hovind is still doing pretty much the same thing he did in this debate, which is throwing out a lot of straw man and using the ad nauseum technique a lot. And Eugenie's got a great strategy for it. Just, like you said, just repeating the question until he answers, not letting him spew bullcrap,
right.
At least contradicting him when he's wrong. She does a great job of keeping the conversation on the rails, on topic, which is hard to do with Ken.
Yeah, it's harder than it looks. It really is.
She absolutely killed it.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. What I really appreciate is just how, like, you said that this was from 1993, and it's impressively bad that Kent says the same stuff this far. But what's impressive to me is that clearly Eugenie actually knows who Kent is and knows his game all the way back then. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I get credit. Like Grayson was giving me credit, like on our stream for knowing a lot of Kent's arguments and knowing what he's going to say sort of before he says it. But she knew about Kent like decades ago. You know what I mean? That's really impressive to me.
She's
how
had his
far
how
far ahead of her time she was.
Absolutely. Yeah, because he has been doing this for a really, really long time, and his approach is really, really stagnant. He's very predictable.
I will say that doesn't, in my opinion, that does not mean it's easy to debate Kent. I don't think you would, underestimate him, but I do think some people
harder,
who,
right? It's hard to beat an intelligent person in debate. It's practically impossible to beat a complete idiot.
Right. Well, you can say what you will about Kent, but you can't deny the experience that he has debating. You can't take that away from him. Even if you think he lost those debates, I mean, still, like, he's done a lot of debates, and so
that's part of why
he's got his rhetoric down really pat. So, and it's hard to sort of try and fight against that. And Professor Dave compared Kent Hovind to a greased pig when they debated.
He's slippery.
He truly is. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for doing this stream and coming on. I wish you, good luck in your debate. And is there anything you want to say before you sort of sign off?
So one of my friends made a really great synopsis of what it's like to debate these guys, and it's kind of like debating Kim Jong-un sucks in the heart of Pyongyang, North Korea. You have to fight both your opponent, you have to fight the moderator, you have to fight the entire audience and all of their dads, and you have to do it with your hands tied behind your back. Is kind of what it's like to debate them. So if you can make any progress in a debate, that's incredible. So I'm pretty psyched to get a chance to take on, Pai Mei, creationists, young Earth, Kent Hovind, master 400 debaters. And after this, I'm gonna come out with a belt like Jay Bundy had, and hold my hands high.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it.
Did you say Pai Mei like from Kill Bill? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Dude, that's so funny because I made a reference to that on Grayson's stream. He was talking about like, preparing, and like my example was that like Pai Mei is like yelling catchphrases at him and like beating him with a bamboo cane.
Yes, and you know what?
And he has to stay perfectly still,
I
like
sold the debate to Donnie. Is I said I was so excited to fight the Pai Mei of young Earth creationism, and Donnie loved it. So
that's funny. Well, I think I think you'll do very, very good in this debate. But
thank you.
Just remember, coming out of it, you're likely going to probably be kicking yourself, like, oh, I should have nailed Kent on that point. I should have made this argument. I could have done better. I could have worded that better there. My advice is just afterwards, just know that you did your best and try not to be too nitpicky with your performance, because with Kent, you'll never be able to respond and to refute everything he says. That's the point of the Gish Gallop. So you can't really, don't let that bother you. And just know, like, I know that I did my best, and I know that it was a good debate, and I'm not going to let myself get bogged down in, oh, I should have said this, or I should have made this point, because, well, that's what you schedule another debate. It's going to say people make mistakes. That's why pencils have erasers on them.
I appreciate that comment so much, and I talk sometimes about why this is still a debate, and that's a question that tortures me constantly. And I think a big part of it is the hurdles the two different sides face. And the biggest hurdle, one of the biggest hurdles, at least our side faces, is just burnout, exhaustion, just getting fed up with these people and their intransigence and their dogmatic obduracy, and it wears you down. And a lot of the time they want to wear you down. And not letting yourself be worn down is like one of the biggest hurdles we face. And then their biggest hurdle is just thinking. Kent Hovind I don't think he's thought about evolution in years, maybe decades. He just has, these rote these thought terminating cliches that he uses self probably more than anybody else. But yeah.
So
I appreciate that advice greatly.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, great stream. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry you're having so many problems with your microphone. People in the chat watching, donate to this man so he can get a new microphone. We out here hustling,
Yeah, it's patreon.com/atheistjunior. So I'll make just a little final piece of advice, and just I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think that debating Kent is mentally exhausting, but you strike me as somebody who has a strong sort of mental fortitude, so I think you'll be okay there. And it's tough for us, but for Kent, he wants the debate that he does to be easy, because he essentially wants to be put on cruise control where he can just read his script and not really engage that much. And if you can, try and get him off the script and try and make the debate difficult for him, because he'll get flustered, he gets frustrated, and that's when I think the real magic happens. You got to get him off the script.
I'm gonna try.
And just ask him, what do you mean when you say, what do you mean? What do you mean when you use this word? Like, ask him about his arguments. That's another thing. And I thank you so much for coming on, and
thank you for having me.
I'll just see you guys in the chat later, and I'll see you in the next stream, and hope you guys enjoyed.
Stop by my channel.
Signing off.
Give me a like. Give me a subscribe.
Go and sub to his channel. I'll put the link in there. So see you guys later.